You already know your harmful patterns. The phone scrolling when you should sleep. Saying yes when you mean no. Harsh words that escape before you can stop them. Reaching for what numbs instead of what heals. You've tried to change them, but they keep returning. This happens because you're fixing symptoms instead of causes. Using willpower when you need understanding. Fighting patterns without knowing why they exist. In the next hours, you'll learn what actually creates these patterns and how they release once you see them clearly. Why your private actions shape you more powerfully than public ones. How boundaries create freedom instead of limiting it. Why your words either drain you or restore you. The specific steps that work when everything else has failed. These teachings come from Buddhism, practical wisdom that's helped millions of people across 2,500 years. You're not broken. You're using methods that can't work. Once you understand what does work, change happens naturally. Find somewhere comfortable to listen. If you'd like, share in the comments where you're joining from. The peace you want isn't something to earn or achieve. It's already in you, waiting. There's a pattern that runs through human life, so common we barely notice it. You achieve something you've wanted for months. The promotion, the relationship, the purchase, the accomplishment, and for a brief moment, you feel satisfied. Finally, this is it. Then, within days, or sometimes hours, the restlessness returns. The satisfaction fades. You're searching again. Maybe you tell yourself you need the next thing, the next level, the next achievement, the next experience. Or maybe you wonder what's wrong with you. Why can't you just be happy? Why does nothing ever feel like enough? The Buddha spent 6 years investigating this exact question, not as philosophy, but as urgent personal need. He had everything: wealth, comfort, pleasure, status, and still felt the restlessness underneath, the sense that something essential was missing. What he discovered became the foundation of Buddhism, and it's radically different from what most people assume. He didn't discover that desire is bad or that you should want less. He discovered something more precise. We're seeking the right thing in the wrong place. Everyone wants peace, satisfaction, relief from restlessness. That longing is natural, even necessary. The problem isn't what we want. It's where we're looking for it. Let me show you what this means in actual life. Think about your phone. You pick it up dozens, maybe hundreds of times each day. Why? Usually not because someone contacted you. You checked 30 seconds ago and nothing was there. You pick it up because of a feeling, a restlessness, a void, a need for something. The phone promises relief. Maybe this time there will be a message, a like, a notification that makes you feel seen, valued, connected. And sometimes there is. You get a hit of satisfaction. Your chest loosens. Someone noticed you. You matter. But within minutes, the restlessness returns. You reach for the phone again. This is what the Buddha called compensation. It's not exactly happiness, though it feels similar. It's temporary relief from an underlying discomfort. And here's the crucial part. Compensation makes the underlying discomfort stronger. Think about it. The more you check your phone for validation, the more you need validation from your phone. The more you rely on external approval to feel okay, the less okay you feel without it. Like drinking salt water when you're thirsty, it provides momentary wetness in your mouth, but increases the actual thirst. This pattern appears everywhere once you see it. Work becomes compensation. You achieve something, feel valuable for a moment, then need the next achievement to maintain that feeling. The satisfaction used to last weeks, then days. Now it barely lasts hours before you're anxious about the next thing. Relationships become compensation. You need your partner to make you feel lovable, your friends to make you feel interesting, your family to make you feel worthy. When they provide it, you feel temporarily whole. When they don't, you feel desperate or angry. You're outsourcing your sense of okayness to other people. Shopping becomes compensation. The new thing promises to complete you, solve the problem, provide lasting satisfaction. It does, for maybe a day. Then it's just another thing you own, and the restlessness returns. Food, alcohol, substances, entertainment, travel, success, beauty, knowledge, anything can become compensation. The question isn't what you're using. It's whether you're seeking lasting satisfaction from something that can only provide temporary relief. Buddhism calls this fundamental confusion. We're disconnected from our actual nature, which is already peaceful, already satisfied, already whole, by layers of misunderstanding. These layers are called veils. Veils aren't punishments or sins. They're simply confusion. Mistaken ideas about where happiness comes from, what creates suffering, who you actually are. The first veil is conceptual. Wrong ideas. I'll be happy when I achieve this. I need that person to approve of me, to be okay. More will make me satisfied. These thoughts feel true. They direct your entire life, but they're based on misunderstanding. The second veil is emotional. Patterns of craving what you don't have, pushing away what you do have, ignoring what doesn't immediately seem relevant to your happiness project. These emotional habits feel like your personality. They're actually learned patterns that keep you cycling through the same suffering. The third veil is behavioral. The actions you repeat automatically, reaching for the phone, saying yes when you mean no, overworking, over-consuming, withdrawing, attacking. These behaviors create consequences that reinforce the confusion. The fourth veil is the world these create. When you seek happiness through achievement, you create a life that requires constant achievement. When you seek it through approval, you create relationships based on performance. Your external circumstances reflect and reinforce your internal confusion. Under these veils is what Buddhism calls your true nature. Not a mystical concept, something practical and immediate. It's the awareness that's present right now as you listen to this. The capacity to experience, to know, to be. This awareness doesn't need achievements or approval or possessions to exist. It simply is. Right now, even with all your problems and patterns, that awareness is here, peaceful by nature. Not because everything in your life is perfect, but because awareness itself isn't troubled by the content it holds. Like the sky isn't damaged by storms. This might sound abstract, so let me make it concrete. Think about a moment when you felt genuinely at peace. Not the excitement of getting something you wanted. Actual peace. Maybe watching sunrise, or sitting in nature, or in those seconds, right before sleep, when thinking stops. In those moments, you weren't at peace because you achieved something. You were at peace because you stopped seeking. The seeking itself is what creates the restlessness. This is the Buddha's core teaching, which he organized into what are called the Four Noble Truths. These aren't beliefs to adopt. They're observations you can verify in your own experience. The first noble truth. There's a particular kind of suffering that runs through human life. Not the suffering of pain or loss, though those exist too, but a more subtle dissatisfaction. The sense that something's not quite right, even when things are objectively good. The restlessness that keeps you seeking the next thing. Buddhism has a word for this, dukkha, but in plain language, it's the suffering of seeking lasting satisfaction in temporary things. You can feel this right now if you're honest. Even as you listen to this, trying to find the answer that will finally make everything okay, there's that slight tension, that sense of needing something to be different. That's dukkha. Not because you're doing anything wrong, because you're human and you've been trained to seek satisfaction where it can't be found. The second noble truth. This suffering has a cause. It's not random, not punishment, not how life has to be. It arises from specific causes, and the primary one is this: clinging to changing things as if they were permanent sources of happiness. Your body changes, ages, gets sick, dies, but you cling to it as if it should provide lasting security. Your relationships change, evolve, sometimes end, but you cling to them as if they should permanently complete you. Your achievements, possessions, status, beauty, strength, all changing, all temporary, all desperately clung to as sources of lasting satisfaction. The clinging itself creates the suffering, not the changes. Change is natural. Clinging to what changes is what hurts. The third noble truth. Because this suffering has causes, it can end. Not by getting everything you want or achieving perfect circumstances. By removing the causes, by releasing the clinging, by seeing through the veils that create the confusion. And the fourth noble truth. There's a specific path that removes these causes. a practical method that's been tested by millions of people across 25 centuries. It works not because it's spiritual or mystical, but because it addresses the actual source of suffering. Let me show you how this operates in real life. Someone spends years building their career, believing that success will finally make them feel valuable and secure. They achieve each goal, and yes, there's satisfaction. For a few days, they feel accomplished. Then the emptiness returns. They tell themselves the goal wasn't big enough. They need the next level. So they work harder, sacrifice more, finally reach that level. Same pattern. Brief satisfaction, then emptiness. They're now successful by every external measure: money, position, recognition, but the restlessness is worse than ever. Because they've spent years training themselves to seek satisfaction externally, and the need has grown stronger with each repetition. One day, maybe they get sick, or have a crisis, or just can't maintain the pace anymore. The achievement machine stops. And in that forced pause, there's a moment of recognition. None of it ever worked. The satisfaction was always temporary. They've been drinking salt water for years, wondering why their thirst keeps growing. This recognition isn't failure. Buddhism calls it renunciation, and it's the actual beginning of the spiritual path. Renunciation doesn't mean giving up happiness or becoming ascetic. It means giving up the futile search for lasting satisfaction in temporary things. It's a maturity that comes from direct experience, not from someone telling you what's true, but from discovering it yourself. You can't genuinely renounce something until you've exhausted it, until you've tried it thoroughly and discovered its limitations. This is why the Buddha's teaching begins with recognizing suffering, not with trying to be spiritual or good. You have to see clearly what doesn't work before you'll genuinely look for what does. Maybe you're at this point now with something in your life. Maybe it's social media. You've spent years seeking validation through likes and comments, and you're starting to notice it's never enough. Even when you get a lot of engagement, the satisfaction fades within hours. The need grows stronger. You're more anxious about your worth than when you started. Or maybe it's relationships. You've gone from partner to partner, or friendship to friendship, hoping this person will finally make you feel complete. Each time, it works briefly. Then you're back to feeling incomplete, needing them to behave certain ways to maintain your sense of okayness. You're exhausted from performing, from needing, from the constant insecurity. Or work, or achievement, or appearance, or substances, or consumption, or even spiritual practice itself. Whatever it is, you're starting to see. It provides relief, but not satisfaction. Distraction, but not peace. Temporary comfort, but not lasting freedom. This recognition is crucial. Stay with it. Don't rush past it by immediately looking for the next method, the next solution. Really see that compensation doesn't work. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because it's structurally impossible for temporary things to provide permanent satisfaction. The Buddha compared this to a person living in a house on fire. You can rearrange the furniture, repaint the walls, invite friends over. These things might provide temporary comfort, but the house is still burning. At some point, you need to leave the house. Leaving the house means stopping the search for happiness in compensation methods. Not because those things are evil or wrong, because they're fundamentally inadequate for what you're actually seeking. What you're actually seeking is relief from the sense of separation, the feeling that something essential is missing, the restlessness that drives the endless search. And here's what Buddhism teaches. That relief isn't somewhere else to find. It's already present when you stop seeking. Like the peace that was always in the house when you stop rearranging furniture long enough to notice. This sounds too simple, which is why people usually reject it. Just stop seeking? That can't be the answer. I need to do something, achieve something, become something different. But that reaction is exactly the pattern we're examining. The belief that you're incomplete and need to acquire something to become complete. This belief is the veil. It's not true, but it feels true, so you organize your entire life around it. Let me be clear. This doesn't mean you stop having goals or enjoying things. It means you stop asking temporary things to provide permanent satisfaction. You can work, achieve, have relationships, enjoy pleasure, but not as methods to complete yourself, because you're already complete, just covered by the belief that you're not. Right now, as you listen to this, notice what's actually happening. You're aware. Thoughts appear in that awareness. Feelings appear in it. Sounds, sensations, everything you experience appears in awareness. But awareness itself, the knowing quality that makes experience possible, isn't lacking anything. It doesn't need achievements or approval to be what it is. This awareness is your actual nature, not a thing you have, but what you most fundamentally are. And it's already at peace, already satisfied, already free. The restlessness appears in it, but doesn't touch it, like clouds appearing in sky that remains clear. The entire Buddhist path is about recognizing this, not as a concept, but as direct experience. And the first step is seeing clearly what's covering it, the veils of confusion, the compensation methods, the seeking itself. So where are you in this? What are your compensation methods? What do you reach for when the restlessness rises? Maybe it's your phone, food, work, shopping, television, planning, worrying, helping others to avoid helping yourself. These aren't moral failures. They're learned strategies that once provided genuine relief. At some point, reaching for your phone actually did make you feel better. Achieving something actually did create satisfaction. The relationship actually did make you feel complete. The problem isn't that these never worked. It's that they can't keep working. They're designed for temporary relief, not lasting satisfaction. Using them for lasting satisfaction is like using a Band-Aid for surgery. It's not that Band-Aids are bad. They're just inadequate for what you're asking them to do. And maybe you're at the point where the compensation methods are breaking down. What used to provide relief doesn't anymore. You've increased the dose. More checking, more achieving, more consuming, but the satisfaction keeps decreasing. You're working harder for less return. The phone doesn't soothe you like it used to. The achievement feels hollow even as you're receiving praise. The relationship that was supposed to complete you just reveals how incomplete you feel. This breakdown feels like crisis. Buddhism sees it as opportunity. Because when compensation methods stop working, you're finally positioned to look for what does work. Not another compensation method at a higher level, but a fundamentally different approach. That approach begins with honesty about what creates suffering and what creates peace. Not what you've been told, not what you hope is true, but what you've actually experienced. In your actual experience, has seeking happiness through achievements led to lasting satisfaction or increasing need for more achievements? Has seeking validation from others made you more secure or more dependent on their approval? Has accumulating possessions, experiences, relationships made you feel more complete or revealed how incomplete you feel without them? Be honest, not to judge yourself, but to see clearly, because clarity is what removes the veils. The Buddha taught that wisdom isn't information. It's seeing things as they actually are. And the first thing to see clearly is this: seeking lasting happiness in temporary things creates suffering, not satisfaction. Once you see this, really see it, not just intellectually, but through direct experience, renunciation happens naturally. You don't have to force yourself to give up compensation methods. You simply stop reaching for them in the same way. Like a child who discovers a toy is broken, they don't need discipline to stop playing with it. They see it doesn't work anymore. This is maturity, not based on age or accomplishment, but on seeing through illusions you previously believed. And from this maturity, a question naturally arises. If lasting satisfaction doesn't come from acquiring things externally, where does it come from? The Buddha's answer is precise. It comes from removing what's covering it. Satisfaction isn't something you create or achieve. It's something you liberate by removing the veils. Think about that carefully. You're not trying to become satisfied. You're trying to remove what's covering the satisfaction that's already present. This completely changes the approach. If you're trying to create satisfaction, you're always seeking, always needing something more. If you're removing obstacles to existing satisfaction, you're working with what's already here. The first creates endless becoming. The second creates recognition. And this brings us to the most important question. What are the veils? Specifically, what exactly is covering your natural peace? We've already named them: conceptual confusion, emotional reactivity, behavioral patterns, and the world these create. But now we need to look more closely, because understanding what creates the veils is how you remove them. And the deepest veil, the one that maintains all the others, is something you do constantly without realizing it. Something so automatic, so habitual, that you think it's just how life is. But it's not. It's a pattern you're creating moment by moment. And once you see how you're creating it, you can stop. Here's something most people never consider. You're being shaped more by what you do in private than what you do in public. Not by the visible moments when others are watching, but by the hidden ones when you think it doesn't count. The way you speak to yourself when you make a mistake. What you do when you're alone with your phone. The shortcuts you take when no one will know. The thoughts you repeat in your mind about yourself and others. The small dishonesties that seem insignificant. These private moments feel like they don't matter because there are no witnesses, no consequences, no one to judge. But someone is always watching. You. And you're the one who has to live inside the person these actions are creating. The Buddha taught something radical about this. He said that every voluntary action through body, speech, or mind leaves an imprint, creates momentum, shapes who you're becoming. Nothing is neutral. Nothing disappears without trace. He called this karma, which people usually misunderstand. They think it means cosmic punishment or some mystical force keeping score. It's simpler and more practical than that. Karma just means action and consequence, cause and effect operating through your choices. You plant seeds through what you do, and those seeds grow into your future experience. Not because the universe is judging you, but because actions have natural results. Let me show you how this operates in a way you can verify right now. Think about your computer or phone. Sometimes it freezes. The screen stops responding. Nothing seems to be happening. But you keep typing anyway, trying to unfreeze it. Then suddenly it catches up, and you see a long string of repeated letters filling the screen from everything you typed while it was frozen. It was all being registered. Every keystroke. You just couldn't see it happening. Your life works the same way. You speak harshly to yourself in the bathroom mirror. No one else hears it, but it registers in your nervous system, your self-concept, the way you'll speak to yourself tomorrow. You lie about something small when you're alone, exaggerate on a form, take credit you didn't earn, pretend you did something you didn't. No one catches you, but it registers in how you see yourself, how much you trust yourself, how fragmented you feel. You judge someone silently, create elaborate criticisms in your mind that never leave your head. They never know, but it registers in your heart, your capacity for empathy, your relationships with everyone. The private actions are creating you more powerfully than the public ones, because the public ones you monitor, control, adjust based on consequences. The private ones you do unconsciously, repeatedly, assuming they don't count. but they count most. Most people live split lives without realizing it. There's the person they are in public, controlled, appropriate, saying the right things, doing what's expected. And there's the person they are in private, harsh, undisciplined, indulgent, critical, chaotic. They think this split is normal. Everyone does it. You need to be different in public than you are in private. That's just being human. But this split creates specific suffering. Insomnia that has no clear cause. Anxiety that doesn't connect to anything obvious. Restlessness during moments that should be peaceful. Meditation that feels blocked. A sense of being at war with yourself. You think something external is causing these symptoms, but often you're generating them internally through the discord between who you want to be and who you're being when no one's watching. Let me paint a picture you might recognize. Someone wakes up with good intentions. Today they'll be patient, kind, present. They meditate for 10 minutes, feel centered, start the day. By 9 in the morning, they're alone with their thoughts. A colleague's email triggers irritation. In their mind, they compose harsh responses they'll never send. They rehearse arguments, build cases against people who aren't there to defend themselves. They think this is harmless because they're not actually saying these things out loud. At lunch, they're scrolling social media, comparing their life to others, feeling inadequate, then briefly superior when they see someone struggling. These feelings seem automatic, not like choices, but they're choosing where to place attention, what to dwell on, how to interpret what they see. Afternoon, working alone, they take shortcuts. No one will notice. Not major dishonesty, just small corners cut, little exaggerations about what they accomplished. Nothing that would get them in trouble, but each one registers as a tiny betrayal of integrity. Evening, they're harsh with themselves about mistakes from the day, the same criticism they'd never direct at a friend. They pour freely onto themselves. You're so stupid, why did you do that? You always mess this up. You never get anything right. Words that would qualify as verbal abuse if someone else said them. Night, they're lying in bed, scrolling their phone for another hour when they meant to sleep. They know it's making sleep worse. They do it anyway. Another small promise to themselves broken. This person would tell you they had a normal, unremarkable day. Nothing bad happened. They were productive, professional, appropriate with everyone they encountered. But look at what actually happened in their private experience. Hours of harsh judgment, comparison and criticism, small dishonesties, self-cruelty, broken commitments to themselves. And now, look at the results. They can't sleep. When they finally do, they wake up restless. Their meditation practice feels forced, empty. They're anxious without knowing why. Relationships feel strained, even when nothing obvious is wrong. They're exhausted, but can't pinpoint what's exhausting them. They think these symptoms are caused by work, stress, or difficult people, or their circumstances. But they're caused by how they're living when no one's watching. The war they're waging internally is showing up as external suffering. This is what the Buddha meant by karma, not mystical punishment, but direct consequence. The quality of your actions creates the quality of your experience, not eventually, in some future life. Right now, today, in your sleep quality and peace of mind and capacity for relationships. And here's what most people miss. The intensity of the effect depends on 4 specific factors. The Buddha described these as the components of a complete action. When all 4 are present, the action creates powerful results. When some are missing, the effect is weaker or gets diluted by other actions. Understanding these 4 factors gives you actual leverage over your karma, not just passively receiving consequences, but actively shaping them. The first factor is intention. Not just what you do, but the mental state and plan behind it. Why you're doing it, what you want to accomplish, the energy motivating the action. 2 people can do the same external action with completely different intentions and create completely different karma. One person is quiet because they're peacefully present. Another is quiet because they're seething with resentment. Same external action, opposite internal reality, opposite results. Intention matters more than you realize. You can do something that looks beneficial externally, but is motivated by ego or fear or manipulation, and it creates harm in you. Or you can fail at something you attempted with genuine care, and that care itself creates benefit. The second factor is the action itself. What you actually do with your body, speech, or mind. This is what most people focus on exclusively, but it's only one component. The action's intensity depends partly on presence. Are you fully there or operating on autopilot? Most actions are semi-conscious, following old patterns, barely registering. These still create effects, but weaker ones. When you're fully present in an action, whether beneficial or harmful, it has much more impact. This is why mindfulness is emphasized in Buddhism, not just for positive actions, but because presence determines intensity. The third factor is completion. Did your intended result actually happen? Did the action land the way you planned? Did it impact others or the world the way you intended? Say you want to undermine a coworker to get their position. You have the intention, clear desire born from envy. You take the action, speak to your boss, frame yourself as the better candidate, cast doubt on your colleague. If your plan works, you get the position. Your colleague is demoted or fired. That's a complete action. All 4 factors are present, and the karmic impact is strong and specific. But if your boss sees through it, if your colleague keeps their position, and you gain nothing, the action is incomplete. The intention and action still affect you. You still feel the envy, the willingness to harm, the scheming energy. But without completion, it doesn't create the full external consequence. Most actions don't complete as planned. Life is messy. Intentions meet resistance. Actions don't land cleanly. Results are mixed or delayed. This is why karma feels complicated. Most actions are incomplete, combining with other incomplete actions in unpredictable ways. But the fourth factor is where your real power lives. It's how you evaluate what happened afterward. Your reflection on the action, whether you rejoice in it or regret it, how you metabolize what you've done. This factor can completely transform the karma you've created. If you do something harmful, lie, speak harshly, act out of envy or anger, but then genuinely recognize the harm and regret it, that regret weakens the karmic imprint. The more honest and complete your regret, the more it neutralizes the action. Regret here doesn't mean wallowing in guilt or self-hatred. Those just create more harm. It means clear recognition. This action created suffering in me and possibly in others, and I don't want to repeat it. That clarity itself interrupts the pattern. And the opposite is equally true. If you do something beneficial, practice generosity, speak kindly, act from wisdom, and then genuinely appreciate having done it, that appreciation multiplies the effect. You're reinforcing the pattern, making it more likely to repeat, deepening the beneficial imprint. This is revolutionary when you actually apply it. It means you're not helpless about your karma. You're not just receiving consequences from past actions. You're actively shaping those consequences through how you reflect on what you've done. You meditated this morning, but barely registered it. Just another thing on your list. The beneficial effect is there, but weak. But if you pause afterward and genuinely appreciate it, feel gratitude for having taken that time, recognize the value of the practice, rejoice in having done it, you multiply the benefit. You're training yourself not just to meditate, but to value meditation. That makes it sustainable. Or you spoke harshly to someone. In the moment, you felt justified, but later, you recognize that harshness created suffering, unnecessary pain, damaged connection. You feel genuine regret, not guilt that paralyzes you, but clear recognition that strengthens your commitment to speak differently next time. That regret weakens the harmful karma. If the regret is as strong as the original intention to harm, it can neutralize the action almost completely. This is why Buddhism emphasizes reflection as a practice, not just doing things, but consciously metabolizing what you've done, appreciating beneficial actions, recognizing harmful ones, using the fourth factor deliberately. Most people don't do this. They move through life on autopilot, barely registering what they're doing, never reflecting on it afterward. Actions blur together. Days pass without consciousness. They wonder why they're not changing, why patterns persist, why there's no growth. It's because they're not completing the cycle. Action without reflection is like planting seeds without knowing what you planted. You'll get results, but they'll seem random, out of your control. So here's the practical application. At the end of each day, take 10 minutes. Review what happened, not to judge yourself harshly, but to see clearly. What actions had beneficial intention? Moments of patience, generosity, honesty, care. Even small ones. Letting someone merge in traffic, speaking gently when you could have been harsh, choosing presence over distraction. Acknowledge these. Genuinely appreciate having done them. Feel good about them. This isn't ego or self-congratulation. It's reinforcing patterns you want to strengthen. You're training yourself at the deepest level. Not just behavior, but how you relate to your behavior. Then look at actions that were harmful, moments of harshness, dishonesty, judgment, avoidance. Not to beat yourself up, but to see clearly. This created suffering. I see that. I don't want to repeat it. That recognition, clear, honest, without drama, weakens the pattern. You're not just hoping to be better tomorrow. You're actively interrupting the karmic momentum through conscious reflection. This practice alone will transform your life. Not immediately, not dramatically, but steadily, cumulatively, undeniably. Because you're no longer living unconsciously. You're no longer assuming your private moments don't matter. You're recognizing that everything you do is planting seeds, and you're choosing consciously what to water and what to uproot. Now let's go deeper into why private actions specifically have such power. When you're alone, you think you're free from consequences. No one sees, no one knows, no social penalty for whatever you do. This feels liberating. But it's actually when you're most vulnerable to creating harm, because the monitoring of social consequences drops away, and what's left is just you and your habitual patterns. Your default settings reveal themselves in private. In public, you're controlled, appropriate, considerate. You moderate harsh speech, practice politeness, show restraint, not because you've transcended those impulses, but because social consequences keep them in check. But alone, when consequences seem absent, the real patterns emerge. How you actually speak to yourself, what you actually consume, where your mind actually goes, what you actually value when no one's watching. And these patterns, the private ones, are what's actually shaping you. Because they're repeated more frequently, you're alone more than you're in public, and they're done with less consciousness, less filtering, more automaticity. So they carve deeper grooves in your psyche. Think about someone trying to develop patience. In public, they're mostly successful. When dealing with others, they manage restraint, speak calmly, show tolerance. but alone, stuck in traffic with no one watching, dealing with slow technology, waiting for something, managing their own mind. They're completely impatient, agitated, irritated, complaining internally, rushing everything. Which pattern is being reinforced more? The occasional public patience or the constant private impatience? The private pattern wins. It's being practiced far more often. So despite appearing patient to others, this person is actually deepening impatience in themselves. Or someone trying to develop honesty. In direct interactions, they're mostly truthful. They don't tell major lies, don't deceive people outright. But in their private life, small dishonesties are constant, exaggerating when describing their day to seem more interesting, omitting unflattering details when filling out forms, framing situations to make themselves look better, creating narratives that aren't quite accurate. They think they're honest because they don't tell big lies, but they're training themselves in dishonesty through countless small actions. And the training is effective because it's constant and unconscious. This is why integrity, the alignment between private and public self, is emphasized so strongly in Buddhism. Not as morality imposed from outside, but as practical recognition. Your private actions are creating your character more than anything else. If you want to transform, you have to address what you do when you think it doesn't count. And here's the specific suffering this split creates. When your private and public selves are different, you're always performing. There's a background effort to maintain the image, hide the reality, manage what's visible. This effort is exhausting. You can't fully relax with others because you're monitoring what they might see. You can't fully relax alone because you're avoiding what you might see in yourself. There's constant low-level tension from living split. This tension shows up as insomnia, as anxiety without clear source, as relationships that feel strained even when nothing obvious is wrong, as meditation that won't deepen because you're holding something back even from yourself. The suffering isn't caused by your circumstances. It's caused by the internal fragmentation. And the relief, when it comes, isn't from achieving something new. It's from dropping the split, from treating your private self with the same care you show publicly, from living with integrity. There's an actual physical lightness that comes from this. Imagine carrying a heavy bag everywhere. You've been carrying it so long you barely notice the weight anymore. Your shoulders hurt. You're tired, but you think that's just how life feels. Then you put the bag down. The relief is immediate, physical, undeniable. You can breathe deeper, move more freely. You wonder how you carried that weight without realizing it. Living with integrity is like this. The moment you stop maintaining different versions of yourself, stop hiding your private actions, stop betraying yourself in small ways, there's tangible relief. Better sleep, less anxiety, easier relationships, deeper meditation, more energy. not because you achieved something, but because you stopped carrying the weight of fragmentation. So here's what this section is actually asking you to do. Recognize that your private moments are shaping you more than your public ones. Those hidden actions you think don't count, they count most. Understand the 4 factors of karma, especially the 4th, reflection. Use it deliberately to weaken harmful patterns and strengthen beneficial ones. Begin treating your private self with the same care you show publicly, not performing for others, but honoring yourself when no one's watching. This isn't about perfection. You'll still make mistakes, act unconsciously, fall into old patterns. That's human. But you can stop assuming those private moments are neutral or irrelevant. You can start recognizing everything is being registered, everything is shaping you, everything matters. And from that recognition, natural care arises. Not forced discipline, but genuine interest in who you're becoming through what you do. Which brings us to something that might surprise you. You might think the solution is more control, more vigilance, more rules, but it's actually about something completely different. It's about freedom, real freedom, not the fake freedom your ego has been selling you, but something far more liberating. You've been sold a particular definition of freedom your entire life. It goes like this. Freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever you want. No one telling you what to do. No restrictions on your choices. Complete spontaneity, total permission, unlimited options. This sounds appealing. It sounds like liberation. It's what advertising sells, what self-help promotes, what your ego desperately wants you to believe. But if you examine your actual experience, you'll notice something strange. This kind of freedom doesn't feel free at all. Think about times when you've had complete freedom to do whatever you wanted. No one watching, no rules, no consequences you could see. Maybe a weekend alone, or a period of your life with minimal structure. What actually happened? For most people, complete freedom quickly becomes chaos. You stay up too late scrolling. Eat whatever's easiest. Skip the things you know would help you. Follow every impulse, craving, distraction, and by the end, you don't feel free. You feel scattered, depleted, vaguely ashamed. This is because the freedom to do whatever you want is actually slavery to whatever you want. And what you want, in any given moment, isn't wisdom or clarity or your deepest values. It's whatever impulse happens to be strongest right now. The craving for comfort, the urge to avoid discomfort, the pull of habit, the reaction to emotion. So, complete freedom becomes following your strongest impulse at every moment, which means you're not free at all. You're controlled by cravings, habits, reactions, whatever grabs your attention most forcefully. You're not steering your life. You're being tossed by internal waves, Buddhism offers a completely different definition of freedom, one that's counterintuitive, almost backwards from what you've been taught. But when you test it in your actual life, you discover it works. Real freedom is this: your wise self creating boundaries to protect you from your reactive self. Let me explain what this means practically. You have different versions of yourself that emerge in different states. When you're rested, calm, clear-minded, you have access to wisdom. You can see what actually serves you and what doesn't. You have perspective, patience, good judgment. But when you're triggered, tired, overwhelmed, flooded with emotion, a different version emerges. This version is reactive, impulsive, defensive, unable to see clearly. It makes decisions you'll regret, says things you wish you hadn't, reaches for what harms you. Everyone experiences these different states. The question is, which version of you gets to make decisions? Most people let reactive self decide. In the moment of craving, the craving decides. In the moment of anger, the anger decides. In the moment of fear, the fear decides. Then later, when they're calm again, they regret it. Why did I say that? Why did I do that? I know better than this. Yes, you do know better, but you're letting the version of you that doesn't know better make the decisions. An ethical code reverses this. When you're clear, calm, wise, that version of you makes decisions for future you, sets boundaries, creates guidelines, establishes commitments that will protect you when you're not clear anymore. This is what Buddhism calls ethical discipline. Not rules imposed from outside, not someone else's morality, not restrictions on your freedom. It's your wise self, caring for your whole self by creating structure that serves you. Let me give you a concrete example. Say you decide, in a moment of clarity, from now on, I won't raise my voice in anger at another person. This isn't some external authority telling you what to do. It's you, in your wisdom, recognizing that raising your voice creates harm. It damages relationships, creates regret, reinforces reactive patterns, doesn't actually solve problems. So you make a commitment. 2 weeks later, you're in an argument. Someone said something that triggered you deeply. You feel heat rising in your chest, your jaw tightening. The impulse to yell is overwhelming. In this moment, you're not wise. You're flooded. But you don't have to make the decision in this state. You already made it. 2 weeks ago, when you were clear, you decided no raised voice in anger. That commitment becomes a lighthouse in the storm. You might still feel the urge to yell, but you have something solid to hold on to. A decision you made when you could see clearly. This is freedom. Not the freedom to yell whenever you feel like it. That's slavery to anger. Real freedom is not being controlled by anger when it arises. having a structure in place that protects you from your worst impulses. Your wise self protected your reactive self. That's what ethical codes actually do. This completely transforms how you think about discipline and rules. Most people experience rules as restrictions. Someone else telling them what they can't do. External authority limiting their freedom. So they resist rules, rebel against them, or follow them resentfully. But ethical codes you create for yourself are different. They're not restrictions, they're rescue ropes. When you're drowning in strong emotion or impulse, you can't think clearly enough to make good decisions. But if you've already set a boundary, when you could think clearly, that boundary saves you. It's like setting up guardrails before driving a dangerous mountain road at night. The guardrails aren't limiting your freedom to drive. They're protecting you from driving off a cliff you won't see coming. So the question becomes, what boundaries would serve you? Not what boundaries you think you should have because someone told you. Not what makes you look good or spiritual, but what boundaries your wise self genuinely recognizes would protect your whole self from harm. Let me show you how to discover this. Think about patterns that create suffering in your life. Maybe harsh speech. You say things in anger that damage relationships. Maybe phone use. You lose hours to scrolling when you meant to rest. Maybe saying yes when you mean no. Overextending yourself until you collapse. Maybe harsh self-criticism. Attacking yourself internally in ways you'd never speak to another person. Pick one pattern, just one. Now, ask yourself, in this moment, when you're relatively calm and clear, does this pattern serve me? Does it create the life I want? Does it reflect my actual values? If the answer is no, and you can see this clearly, then you're ready to create a boundary. Not because you should, not to prove you're disciplined or good, but because you genuinely see that this pattern harms you and you want to protect yourself from it. The boundary needs to be specific and clear. Not, I'll be better with my phone. That's too vague to be useful when you're triggered. But my phone stays out of my bedroom. It charges in the kitchen every night. That's specific. You can follow that even when you're tired, and your impulse is to scroll. Not, I'll be nicer to myself. Too abstract. But I won't call myself stupid. When I make a mistake, I'll speak to myself like I'd speak to a friend who made the same mistake, specific enough to implement in the moment. The more specific your boundary, the more useful it becomes when you need it. Now here's where most people get stuck. They create the boundary, commit to it, and within days or weeks they break it. Then they feel like failures, give up, decide discipline doesn't work for them. But breaking a boundary isn't failure. It's information. Maybe the boundary was too ambitious for where you actually are. Maybe you need additional support structures. Maybe you discovered a deeper pattern underneath. Let's say you commit to no phone in bedroom, but you keep bringing it in anyway. Don't just feel bad about it. Investigate. What's pulling you to break this boundary? Maybe you're using the phone as sleep aid because you can't be alone with your thoughts. That's deeper than phone use. It's avoidance of something uncomfortable. Or maybe the boundary is too extreme. You need the phone for emergencies, so having it in another room creates anxiety that defeats the purpose. Then adjust. Phone in bedroom, but in a drawer, not on the nightstand. Or airplane mode, after 9 p.m. The point isn't rigid perfection. It's conscious choice rather than unconscious reaction. Buddhism describes 3 stages in developing ethical conduct. Understanding these stages helps you not demand too much from yourself too soon. Stage 1. Stop actively harmful patterns. This is where everyone begins. You're still doing things that create clear, obvious harm to yourself or others. The first work is simply stopping these. Not because you're bad for doing them, but because they're actively creating suffering, and you're ready to stop creating that suffering. This stage is about boundaries and distance. Set clear limits on harmful behavior. Create distance from situations that trigger those behaviors. Protect yourself while you build strength. Someone trying to stop drinking doesn't hang out in bars testing their willpower. That's not weakness. It's wisdom. You remove yourself from triggering situations until you have solid ground to stand on. Same with any harmful pattern. If certain people trigger your harshest speech, you might need distance from them temporarily. Not forever, but while you're learning new patterns. If social media triggers comparison and harsh self-judgment, you might need to delete the apps for a while. Not as punishment, but as protection, while you develop different relationship with yourself. This stage requires honesty about your actual capacity right now. Not where you wish you were, but where you are. Stage 2. Actively cultivate beneficial patterns. Once you've stopped the most harmful behaviors, there's space to build positive ones. Generosity instead of grasping. Kind speech instead of harsh. Honesty instead of manipulation. Patience instead of reactivity. This stage is about replacement. You're not just stopping old patterns, you're training new ones. But here's where a danger emerges. People can become attached to being good. You're no longer drinking, or speaking harshly, or lying. You're being generous, patient, honest, and you start identifying with these behaviors. I'm a good person now. I'm better than people who still do those harmful things. Buddhism calls this Puritanism or moralism, using your good behavior as a new source of pride and comparison. Your ethical conduct becomes another way to feel superior, another form of ego. You're no longer being kind because kindness serves everyone. You're being kind because it makes you feel like a good person. You're no longer being honest because honesty creates trust. You're being honest because you can feel proud of your integrity. This is subtle, And almost everyone who seriously practices ethical conduct goes through this phase. You become a bit rigid, a bit self-righteous. You judge people who don't follow your ethical code. You feel virtuous. And then something happens that reveals this. You fail at your code, speak harshly despite your commitment, or act selfishly, or lie to avoid discomfort. And you feel crushed because you've been deriving your value from being good. This crisis actually opens the door to the third stage. Stage 3, non-dual conduct. This is a freedom beyond both harmful and beneficial, beyond good and bad. Not that harm and benefit don't exist, they clearly do. But you stop identifying with the forms of behavior and start responding to what each situation actually needs. Sometimes a situation needs soft, gentle speech. Sometimes it needs direct, even harsh truth. Sometimes it needs generosity. Sometimes it needs firm boundaries. Sometimes it needs silence. Sometimes it needs a lot of words. When you're attached to being good, you become predictable and rigid. You're always soft-spoken, even when the situation needs directness, or always generous, even when the person needs to develop their own resourcefulness. Your behavior becomes about maintaining your identity, not serving the situation. Non-dual conduct means freedom to respond appropriately, not controlled by impulse, but also not controlled by rigid rules, guided by wisdom and compassion that can see what's actually needed. This is advanced. Most people need to thoroughly train in stage 2 before stage 3 makes sense. You can't skip to fluid, situational wisdom if you're still acting harmfully on impulse. But it's useful to know the stages exist. So when you catch yourself being self-righteous about your good behavior, you recognize this is normal, it's part of the process, and there's further to go. Now let's get practical about implementing this in your life right now. You're probably at stage 1 with some behaviors and stage 2 with others. Maybe you've already stopped the most harmful patterns, but you're stuck in unconscious neutral habits that waste energy without obviously helping or harming. Here's how to work with this. Identify your most harmful pattern, the one that creates the most suffering for you or others, the one you most want to stop but haven't been able to. Now create one simple boundary to address it. Make it specific, measurable, and genuinely motivated by care for yourself. I won't check work email after 7 p.m. I won't speak about people who aren't present. I won't say yes to requests when my first feeling is no. I won't scroll social media when I first wake up. Whatever boundary you choose, write it down. Make it visible. Tell someone you trust, if that helps. But mainly, commit to it clearly when you're in a state of clarity. Then, and this is crucial, plan for when you'll want to break it. You will want to break it. That's not failure. That's how patterns work. The old impulse will arise, strong and compelling. So what will you do in that moment? If your boundary is no phone in bedroom, What will you do at 10:30 p.m. when you're lying in bed and suddenly remember something you wanted to check? Maybe you get up, go to the kitchen, check the one thing, then leave the phone there. Or maybe you write yourself a note to check it tomorrow. Or maybe you practice being with the discomfort of not checking. Have the plan before the moment, because in the moment, you won't think clearly. You'll rationalize, justify, convince yourself this one time is fine. The plan is your wise self helping your reactive self. Also plan for when you do break the boundary, which you probably will, at least at first. What then? Don't collapse into shame or give up entirely. Use the fourth factor we learned earlier, evaluation. Recognize, I broke my commitment. This created the suffering I was trying to avoid. I genuinely regret it. That regret weakens the pattern. Then renew your commitment, not as punishment, but as care. I see why this boundary matters. I'm choosing it again. Over time, something shifts. The boundary that initially felt like restriction starts feeling like freedom. You're no longer controlled by the impulse. You have choice, real choice, not just the illusion of choice, while following the strongest craving. And you start noticing the benefits. Without phone in bedroom, you sleep better, wake more rested, feel less anxious, have clearer mornings. Without checking work email at night, your evenings become actually restful. Your mind can settle. Relationships with family improve because you're actually present. Without harsh self-criticism, your inner experience becomes gentler. You have more energy. You're kinder to others because you're not at war with yourself. These aren't abstractions. They're tangible improvements in your daily life. And they come not from achieving something new, but from stopping something harmful. This is what the Buddha meant by ethical conduct being the foundation of practice. You can't meditate deeply if your life is chaos. You can't access wisdom if your mind is constantly agitated by harmful actions and their consequences. You can't experience peace if you're continuously creating suffering through unconscious behavior. Ethical conduct creates the container for everything else. It's like tending a garden. Before you plant flowers, you remove weeds. Before you cultivate beauty, you stop cultivating harm. It's not exciting, but it's essential. And here's what most people don't realize until they try it. Creating boundaries, real, specific boundaries based on your actual wisdom, is empowering, not restricting. You're taking agency over your life, deciding who you want to become rather than being tossed by impulses. The freedom to do whatever you want feels powerful until you realize you're just doing what your conditioning wants. Your cravings want. Your habits want. Your reactivity wants. But creating conscious boundaries based on your values, that's actually exercising free will. That's genuine autonomy. You're no longer a puppet of impulse. You're making choices that reflect who you want to be, not just what you want in this moment. So here's the practice for this section. Choose one harmful pattern you genuinely want to stop. Create one specific boundary to address it. Write it down clearly. Commit to it from your wise self. Then plan for the challenges. When will you want to break this boundary? What will you do in that moment instead? How will you respond if you do break it? And practice this for 1 week. Just 1 week, one boundary. Watch what happens. Not just whether you succeed or fail. That's less important than you think. But watch how it feels to have a conscious commitment rather than unconscious reaction. Notice when the impulse arises and you have something to hold on to besides willpower. Notice the difference between being controlled by craving and choosing your response. Notice any relief that comes from living more aligned with your actual values. This is the beginning of real freedom. Not freedom from rules, but freedom from being controlled by impulses you didn't choose and don't actually serve you. Your wise self, protecting your reactive self. Your clear mind, making decisions for your confused mind. Your deepest values guiding your moment-to-moment choices. That's what ethical codes actually create. Not restriction, but liberation from the tyranny of impulse. And there's one specific area where these boundaries matter more than almost anywhere else. One domain that affects every single day, every relationship, every moment of peace or agitation you experience. Your words. What comes out of your mouth. How you speak to yourself and others. Close your eyes and remember something cruel someone said to you years ago, maybe in childhood, maybe last year. A cutting remark, a harsh judgment, words meant to wound. You can probably still feel it. The exact words might be fuzzy, but the impact remains. It shaped how you see yourself, how you move through the world, what you believe is possible for you. Now, think about the kindest thing anyone ever said to you. Words that saw something in you, believed in you, offered genuine care. Those words are still alive in you too, still providing strength, still influencing your choices, still offering comfort when you need it. The Buddha taught that words have more power to harm or heal than almost anything else. More than actions, more than thoughts, more than circumstances, because words carry intention directly into another person's mind. They bypass physical defenses and land in consciousness itself. A physical wound heals. The body regenerates, scars over, returns to function. But words can wound for decades. They become part of your internal dialogue, the voice you hear when you're alone. And yet most people speak completely unconsciously. Words pour out automatically, following old patterns, reacting to emotions, filling silence, performing for others. You say things you don't mean things you don't say, and spend enormous energy managing the consequences of unconscious speech. Buddhism offers specific guidance here, not vague advice to be nice, or speak your truth, but precise practices that transform both what you say and what you experience. The Buddha gave 4 guidelines for speech. They've been taught for 2,500 years because they work, not as moral rules, but as practical methods for creating peace instead of suffering through words. The first guideline: don't speak harshly, speak sweetly. This doesn't mean fake sweetness or avoiding truth. It means understanding that harsh words create harsh results in others, and especially in you. Watch what happens when you speak harshly. Maybe someone cuts you off in traffic, and you curse them, even though they can't hear you. Or a family member does something thoughtless, and you respond with sarcasm or criticism. Or you're frustrated with yourself, and your internal voice becomes brutal. You're so stupid. You always mess this up. You never learn. In the moment, harsh speech feels satisfying, like releasing pressure, expressing justified anger, telling the truth forcefully. But watch what it actually creates. Your body tenses, your jaw tightens, chest constricts, shoulders rise, your heart rate increases, stress hormones flood your system. This isn't metaphor, it's measurable physiology. Your mind becomes agitated. The harsh words create a harsh, internal state. You replay the situation, build more arguments, prepare more cutting remarks. Even after the interaction ends, you're still engaged mentally, still stirred up. Your relationships deteriorate. The person you spoke to harshly either withdraws or retaliates. Even if they don't respond outwardly, something shifts. Trust erodes. Warmth decreases. The space between you becomes slightly colder. And if the harsh words were internal, directed at yourself, the damage is worse. Because you can't escape the person attacking you. You carry that harsh voice everywhere, and it shapes how you see yourself, what you believe you deserve, how you expect others to treat you. Most people justify harsh speech as honesty. I'm just being real. I'm telling the truth. They need to hear this. But watch closely when someone says this. They don't speak all truths. They select the truth that happens to wound. They don't tell their colleague, "You did good work on this project. You're improving steadily. I appreciate your effort." Those are truths too. They say, "You made this mistake again. You're not catching on as fast as others. You're falling behind." Also true, but chosen specifically because it hurts. The Buddha's teaching is that for speech to be right, it must pass 3 tests. Is it true? Is it beneficial? Is it necessary? All 3, not just 1 or 2. Something can be true and beneficial, but not necessary. You don't need to point out every flaw you notice. Something can be true and feel necessary but not be beneficial. Saying, "I told you so," after someone makes a mistake. Something can feel beneficial and necessary but not be true, exaggerating someone's mistakes to justify your anger. Only when all three align does speech actually serve. Sweet speech doesn't mean saying only pleasant things. It means speaking truth in a way that opens rather than closes, heals rather than wounds, creates possibility rather than defensiveness. You can give difficult feedback sweetly. I notice this pattern. It's creating problems. I want to help you address it. Lands completely differently than, you keep messing this up. What's wrong with you? The information is similar. The impact is opposite. Sweet speech creates sweet results. Your body stays relaxed. Your mind remains clear. The other person can actually hear what you're saying because they're not defending against attack, and you feel better afterward, not worse. The second guideline: don't lie, speak truth. This seems obvious until you watch how much lying actually happens. Not just blatant lies, but the constant small distortions that fill daily life. Exaggerating to make yourself sound more impressive, omitting details that would make you look bad, agreeing when you actually disagree to avoid conflict, saying you're fine when you're not, claiming you did something you didn't quite do, blaming circumstances when it was actually your choice. These aren't major lies that would get you in trouble. They're adjustments to reality, small enough that you barely notice making them. But they accumulate. Each small lie fragments you a little more, creates a gap between what's true and what you present, between who you are and who you're pretending to be. Over time, you're not sure what's true anymore. You've told the story one way so often that the actual memory blurs. You've presented yourself a certain way so consistently that you forget it's a presentation. And there's constant low-level anxiety, the vigilance required to maintain various versions of yourself with different people, the fear of being caught in contradictions, the exhaustion of remembering what you said to whom. Truthful speech is structurally simpler. You don't have to remember what you said because it's just what's true. You don't have to manage different versions because there's only one reality. You don't have to fear being found out because there's nothing to find out. This creates tremendous relief. Not immediately. At first, truth-telling feels vulnerable and uncomfortable. You're so used to managing impressions that simple honesty feels exposed. But over weeks and months, something shifts. You can relax. You stand on solid ground because the ground is actually real. People trust you more because they sense consistency. And you trust yourself more because you're not constantly betraying your own knowing. The third guideline: don't divide with words, create harmony. This addresses gossip, complaint, speaking about people who aren't present, creating factions and sides. Watch how common this is. Someone does something you don't like, and instead of addressing it with them, you tell others. Build a case. Gather support for your perspective. create an us who sees the problem versus them who is the problem. This feels like bonding. Shared criticism creates temporary intimacy. You and your confidant feel close because you're allied against someone else. But notice what it actually creates. The person you spoke about senses something wrong even if they don't know specifics. Energy shifts. Trust erodes. The relationship becomes careful, guarded. The person you spoke to now questions, if you speak this way about others, do you speak this way about me when I'm not there? The intimacy you felt becomes tinged with suspicion, and you carry the energy of division. Your mind holds grudges, rehearses complaints, maintains positions. This creates internal fragmentation and external conflict. The Buddhist practice is speak about people as if they were present. If you wouldn't say it to their face, don't say it about them. If you have an issue with someone, address it with them, not with others. Use words to bridge, connect, create understanding rather than to divide, separate, create sides. This is especially important in families, workplaces, spiritual communities, anywhere you're in ongoing relationship. Division spreads quickly and damages deeply. Harmony requires conscious cultivation. When you must speak about someone not present, speak in ways that increase connection rather than separation. I'm struggling in my relationship with them. I want to understand them better, is different from, let me tell you what's wrong with them. The first seeks insight and repair. The second seeks validation and alliance. Both involve speaking about someone absent, but they create opposite results. The fourth guideline: don't chatter idly. Speak when necessary. This is hardest for many people because it challenges the social function of speech. We use talking to fill silence, create connection, establish presence, process thoughts, avoid being alone with ourselves. The Buddhist teaching isn't that you become silent. It's that you become conscious about when speech actually serves and when it's just energy leaving your body. Watch what happens in idle chatter. You're talking with someone, and within minutes, you're discussing someone not present. Then you're talking about entertainment, a show, a movie, a celebrity, validating it as important. Then you're complaining about something, reinforcing your dissatisfaction. None of this serves. It's not connecting you meaningfully. It's not creating understanding or solving problems. It's just habit, automaticity, using words because words are available. And it drains you. Speech requires energy, breath, vocal cords, mental processing, emotional engagement. When you speak constantly without purpose, that energy hemorrhages. You feel tired after social interactions, but don't know why. You wonder why you can't sustain practices that require focus. It's because you're pouring energy out through unconscious speech. People who've done silent retreats discover this quickly. Just 3 or 4 days of not speaking, and energy accumulates noticeably. Mental clarity increases. Emotional stability improves. Meditation deepens. Sleep becomes more restful. Not because silence is magical, but because you stopped the constant drain of unnecessary speech. The practice isn't to stop talking. It's to notice when you're about to speak and ask, is this necessary? Does it serve? Or am I just filling space, performing, avoiding silence? And here's what shifts when you speak less. When you do speak, people actually listen. Your words carry weight because they're not constant background noise. You speak from genuine need to communicate, not from habit. Your presence becomes more powerful. Silence isn't absence. It's listening, attending, being with what is. People feel met by your attention in ways they don't when you're filling air with words. And internally, you're calmer, less agitated, more settled, because you're not constantly stirring yourself up through speech. Now let's bring all 4 guidelines together and see how they operate in actual life. Most people's default speech patterns violate all 4 guidelines unconsciously. They speak harshly when frustrated, lie in small ways constantly, divide people through gossip and complaint, and chatter to avoid silence. Then they wonder why relationships feel strained, why they're anxious, why they can't sleep, why meditation doesn't work. Your speech is creating your experience more than you realize. Let me show you a typical day of unconscious speech. Morning. You wake up tired, immediately speak harshly to yourself about how you stayed up too late again. You check your phone, see a message that irritates you, compose harsh responses in your mind. You won't send, but that still agitates you. Breakfast. Family member asks something and you respond curtly, more harshly than necessary. Small moment, but it sets a tone. They withdraw slightly. The morning becomes a bit colder. Work. You chat with colleague about another co-worker's mistakes, bonding through shared criticism. Feels like connection in the moment. Creates division in the environment. Email from boss requires response. You exaggerate slightly how much progress you've made. Small lie, barely registers. Lunch. Scrolling phone. You comment on something online without thinking. Words you wouldn't say to someone's face, but online feels consequence-free. You're participating in dividing the world into us versus them. Afternoon. Hours of meetings where half the words spoken aren't necessary. People filling air, performing competence, avoiding silence. You participate because that's what's expected. Leave feeling drained without knowing why. Evening. Partner asks how your day was. You complain about various things, reinforcing dissatisfaction, speaking it into reality, making it more solid. They listen, try to help. You defend your complaints because they've become part of your identity. Night. Lying in bed, your internal voice reviews everything you said that you wish you hadn't, everything you didn't say that you wish you had. Harsh criticism of yourself for being awkward, too quiet, too talkative, not smart enough. You drift into anxious sleep, wondering why you can't settle. This is not unusual. For many people, this is just Tuesday. But look at what was created through speech alone. Relationships strained through harsh words, internal fragmentation through small lies, environmental division through gossip, energy drained through unnecessary chatter, agitation that prevents rest. All of this suffering generated primarily through unconscious speech. Now imagine a different day. Morning. You wake tired, but speak to yourself kindly, like you'd speak to a friend. You're tired. Rest when you can today. Irritating message comes in. You notice the impulse to respond harshly, but choose to wait until you're calm. Breakfast. Family member's question receives patient attention. Your tone is warm even though you're tired. Small moment, but it creates connection instead of distance. Work. Colleague wants to gossip about co-workers' mistakes. You redirect. I haven't noticed that. I found them helpful with other things. Truth, but focusing on connection rather than division. Boss's email gets honest response about actual progress. Feels vulnerable, but solid. Lunch. You notice impulse to comment online, but recognize it's not necessary. Let it pass. Energy conserved. Afternoon. In meetings, you speak only when you have something useful to contribute. Your words carry more weight because they're not constant. You listen more. Presence deepens. Leave feeling energized rather than drained. Evening. Partner asks about your day. You share both challenges and moments of appreciation. Not denying difficulty but not rehearsing complaint. Speaking towards solution rather than solidifying problem. Night. Lying in bed, your internal voice is gentle. You did your best today. Rest now. You settle easily into sleep. Same external circumstances. Completely different experience, created almost entirely through conscious speech. This isn't theoretical. You can test it this week. Choose one of the 4 guidelines to practice for 7 days. Just one. Make it specific. Maybe, I won't speak harshly to myself. When I notice harsh internal speech, I'll rephrase it kindly. Or, I won't speak about people who aren't present, unless it's to understand them better or solve an actual problem. Or, before speaking, I'll check, is this true, beneficial, and necessary? If not all 3, I'll remain silent. Watch what happens. The first days will feel strange, almost artificial. You're so used to unconscious speech that conscious speech feels like performance. You'll notice how often you want to speak harshly, lie, gossip, or chatter. The impulses are strong and automatic. You've trained them for years. But stay with it. By day 3 or 4, something shifts. The impulses are still there, but you have space between impulse and action. You can choose. By day 7, you notice results. If you've been practicing kind self-speech, you sleep better, feel less anxious, have more energy, are kinder to others because you're not at war internally. If you've been practicing not gossiping, relationships feel lighter, less drama, more trust. The environment around you becomes more peaceful. If you've been practicing the 3 tests before speaking, you have more energy, clearer mind, deeper presence, and people listen more carefully when you do speak. These aren't subtle effects. They're tangible, measurable differences in daily experience. And they reveal something crucial. Your words have been creating your world more than your circumstances have. The Buddha taught that speech is one of 3 doors through which you create your karma: body, speech, mind. Of the 3, speech is often most active and most unconscious. You can go days without physically harmful action, but harmful speech? For many people, it's constant. Transforming speech transforms experience, not eventually, not theoretically. This week, today, in your next conversation. So here's the practice. 1 guideline, 7 days, genuine commitment. Sweet speech instead of harsh. Truth instead of lies. Words that unite instead of divide. Necessary speech instead of idle chatter. Pick 1. Practice it. Watch what changes. But here's what you might wonder after a week of conscious speech. How do I sustain this? How do I make it last when I've tried changing patterns before and they always revert? That question points to something essential, something that makes the difference between temporary improvement and lasting transformation. You've tried to change before, started with good intentions, clear commitments, genuine motivation. Maybe it lasted days, maybe weeks. Then gradually or suddenly, you slid back into old patterns. And each time this happens, it gets harder to try again. Because now you have evidence. You can't change. This doesn't work for you. You're not disciplined enough. Something's wrong with you. But the problem isn't you. It's that you're trying to change without understanding the actual mechanics of transformation. Most people approach change like this. They decide what they should be doing, then try to force themselves to do it through willpower alone. When willpower runs out, which it always does, they collapse back into old patterns and interpret this as personal failure. Buddhism offers a completely different approach, one based on understanding stages, respecting your actual capacity, and working with how transformation actually happens, rather than how you wish it would happen. The first thing to understand is that there are stages in development, and trying to skip them guarantees failure. Think about learning any skill, playing an instrument, speaking a language, building physical strength. You don't start by performing concerts, having complex conversations, or lifting maximum weight. You start with basics, build foundation, progress gradually as capacity increases. Everyone accepts this for physical or technical skills. But for ethical and spiritual development, people think they should be able to jump straight to advanced practice. They read about monks meditating in caves, or teachers speaking about unconditional love for all beings, or advanced practitioners remaining peaceful in any circumstance. Then they try to do this themselves immediately, from wherever they actually are. And it doesn't work, because they're missing the foundation those monks and teachers built over years or decades. The Buddha taught that transformation happens in stages, and each stage has different requirements. Understanding these stages helps you work with where you actually are, instead of where you wish you were. Stage 1. Create distance from what harms you. When you don't yet have internal stability, resources, and maturity, your first job is protection. Protect yourself from situations, people, and environments that trigger your most harmful patterns. This isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Someone trying to stop drinking doesn't prove their strength by hanging out in bars. That's not discipline, it's self-sabotage. They create distance from triggering situations until they have solid ground to stand on. Same principle applies to any harmful pattern. If certain people consistently trigger your harshest speech, you might need distance from them while you develop new patterns. Not forever, but temporarily. Not because you're avoiding growth, but because you're protecting the space needed for growth. If social media triggers comparison and self-judgment, you might need to delete the apps for a while. Not as punishment, but as protection while you develop a different relationship with yourself. If your work environment is toxic in ways that overwhelm your capacity, you might need to change jobs. Not because you're weak, but because staying in that environment prevents the development you need. Most people resist this. They think they should be able to handle anything, that needing distance means failure, that truly spiritual people can thrive anywhere. But a seedling needs protection while it's growing. Put it in harsh conditions too soon, and it dies. Give it shelter until it's strong, and it can eventually thrive in challenging environments. You're the seedling, and the question isn't whether you should eventually be able to handle difficult situations. The question is, can you handle them now? Be honest. That relationship that leaves you depleted every time, does it help you develop patience and compassion? Or does it trigger patterns that make you worse? That job that has you anxious every morning, is it teaching you valuable skills and resilience? Or is it preventing you from having any energy for your actual development? That friend group where gossip and complaint dominate, is it helping you practice staying centered in difficult dynamics, or is it pulling you into patterns you're trying to release? Here's how to tell. After interacting with this person or situation, are you better or worse? More patient or more reactive? More generous or more defensive? More clear or more confused? More energized or more depleted? If consistently worse, you need distance. Not because the person or situation is bad, but because you're not yet equipped to engage with it beneficially. The teaching is simple. If a relationship isn't improving you and you're not improving them, if it's mutual harm or at best neutral, create distance until one of you develops enough that the relationship can be mutually beneficial. This might be temporary distance while you build foundation, or it might be permanent if the dynamic can't shift. Only you can assess honestly. But don't stay in harmful situations trying to prove spiritual strength. That's ego, not wisdom. Stage 2. Engage difficulties as practice. Once you have foundation, some stability, resources, capacity, difficult situations become opportunities rather than threats. Now the person who triggers your impatience becomes your patience teacher. The situation that used to overwhelm you becomes your resilience practice. The challenge that would have broken you becomes the thing that strengthens you. But notice, this only works when you have foundation. You can't develop patience in situations that completely overwhelm you. You just develop trauma and defensive patterns. You develop patience in situations that challenge you but don't destroy you, that stretch you without breaking you, that require growth but don't demand more than you can give. So the question becomes, how do you know when you're ready to move from stage 1 to stage 2? Test it carefully. Maybe you've been avoiding that difficult family member for 6 months while working on your patterns. Now you try a brief interaction, a phone call, a short visit. Do you maintain your center? Can you respond rather than react? Do you leave feeling okay or completely destabilized? If you maintained some center, you might be ready for longer engagement. If you were completely destabilized, you need more time building foundation. There's no shame in either result. You're just gathering information about your actual capacity right now. And here's what's crucial. Your capacity changes over time. The situation that would have destroyed you 6 months ago might be manageable now. The person you couldn't engage with productively before might now help you grow. Your edges expand as you develop. But you can't rush this. You can't force expansion through willpower. You can only create conditions for natural growth and allow it to happen at its own pace. Now let's get practical about implementation. You understand now that change happens in stages, that you need to protect yourself initially while building foundation. So what does building foundation actually look like, day to day? The Buddha taught 3 superior disciplines that must be developed in order: conduct, meditation, wisdom. Not developed simultaneously, in order. because each creates the foundation for the next. Conduct comes first. This is what we've been discussing: ethical boundaries, conscious speech, private integrity, daily choices that either create suffering or peace. Without foundation of conduct, meditation will be superficial. You'll sit on the cushion trying to concentrate while your life is creating constant agitation. Your mind won't settle because you keep creating reasons for it to be unsettled. Imagine trying to meditate after spending the day lying, gossiping, speaking harshly, and betraying your own commitments. Your body carries that stress. Your mind holds those conflicts. You sit down to be peaceful, but you've spent all day creating agitation. So conduct isn't just morality for its own sake. It's creating the conditions that allow deeper work. When your conduct is aligned, when you're not constantly creating suffering through your actions, your nervous system can settle. Your mind can focus. You have energy available for meditation rather than using all your energy managing consequences of harmful actions. This is why Buddhism emphasizes conduct so strongly, not to make you good, but to make you capable of the deeper work. Once conduct creates stability, meditation becomes possible. Now your mind has space to develop concentration, clarity, insight. You're not just managing symptoms, you're cultivating qualities, building capacity for sustained attention, emotional regulation, seeing patterns clearly, and from purified mind, developed through meditation, wisdom naturally arises. Direct insight into how suffering is created and how it ends. Clear seeing of reality rather than your projections onto reality. Recognition of your actual nature beyond the veils. But you can't skip to wisdom. You can read about it, think about it, believe in it, but wisdom only arises through the direct seeing that comes from purified mind. And mind only purifies through meditation supported by ethical conduct. This is why previous attempts at change probably failed. You tried to be wise before you'd developed the foundation, or tried to meditate before you'd stabilized your conduct, or tried to do everything at once and got overwhelmed. The path works when you follow the order: conduct, meditation, wisdom. So here's your actual practice starting this week. Focus exclusively on conduct for now. Don't worry about advanced meditation or philosophical wisdom. Just work with your daily actions, speech, and basic mental states. Every evening, take 10 minutes for reflection. This is using the fourth factor we learned, evaluation, to actively shape your karma. Review your day and ask 3 questions. First, what actions today had beneficial intention? Even small ones count. You paused before responding angrily. You told the truth when lying would have been easier. You spoke kindly to yourself after a mistake. You chose silence instead of gossip. You maintained a boundary you'd set. Acknowledge these specifically. Don't just think, I did okay. Actually name what you did. I practiced kind self-speech 3 times today. I maintained my phone boundary. I redirected a conversation away from gossip. And then, this is important, genuinely appreciate having done these things. Feel good about them. Let yourself enjoy the recognition. This isn't ego. It's reinforcement. You're training yourself to value beneficial actions, making them more likely to repeat. Most people skip this step. They notice what they did well and immediately move to what they did wrong, so they never reinforce the beneficial patterns. Spend real time appreciating what you did well, even if it seems small, especially if it seems small, because small actions repeated create your character. Second question, what actions today were harmful? Again, be specific. I spoke harshly to my partner. I lied about why I was late. I spent 2 hours scrolling when I meant to rest. I gossiped about a colleague. Don't dramatize or beat yourself up. Just see clearly. And then recognize, this created suffering. I see how it hurt me or others. I don't want to repeat it. That recognition, clear, honest, without drama, weakens the pattern. You're using regret as a tool, not as punishment. If your regret is genuine and as strong as the original intention to do the harmful thing, it can neutralize much of the negative karma. This is the power of the 4th factor. But your regret has to be real, not performative guilt, not self-hatred disguised as remorse. Actually seeing clearly, this pattern creates suffering, and I genuinely want to stop creating suffering. Third question, what did I learn? This shifts you from judgment to curiosity, from I'm bad at this, to I'm discovering how this works. Maybe you learned, when I'm hungry, I'm much more likely to speak harshly. So, I need to prioritize eating regularly. Or, that friend always pulls me into gossip. I need strategies for redirecting those conversations or creating distance. Or, I maintained my boundary easily in the morning, but broke it at night. Evenings are harder. I need stronger support there. You're gathering data about your actual patterns, triggers, capacities. This information helps you create better boundaries and stronger practices. This 10-minute reflection practice is more powerful than hours of meditation without it, because you're consciously directing your karma, reinforcing beneficial patterns through appreciation, weakening harmful patterns through genuine regret, learning from everything rather than just reacting to it. Do this every evening for 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks. See what changes. Now let's address the question of when to create distance and when to engage. You understand the stages. Protect first, engage later. But how do you actually decide in specific situations? Buddhism offers clear criteria for evaluating whether any action or situation serves you. First criterion, does it cause harm? To yourself, or others? If yes, that's your primary information. Not, does it feel uncomfortable? Discomfort can be growth, but actual harm, damage to your physical health, mental stability, ethical boundaries, or relationships. Damage to others' well-being in ways that aren't necessary for their growth. If something consistently causes harm, that job destroying your health, that relationship triggering your worst patterns, that environment preventing any peace, creating distance is wise, not weak. Second criterion, is it beneficial? Does it add value? Help you develop? Serve others meaningfully? Create conditions for growth? Many things are neutral. They don't harm, but don't help either. They just pass time, use energy, take space. If something isn't harmful, but also isn't beneficial, you can ask, is this how I want to use my limited time and energy? Maybe the answer is yes sometimes. Rest, play, and unproductive time have value. But if most of your life is neutral, neither harmful nor beneficial, just passing time, you might want to examine that. Third criterion, will you regret it? This is about extending your timeline. Right now, staying up, scrolling your phone feels fine. But tomorrow morning, you'll regret it. You know this because it's happened hundreds of times before. So don't decide based on how it feels right now. Decide based on how you'll feel tomorrow. Extend further. How will you view this decision in a year, 5 years, on your deathbed? From your deathbed, will you regret that you stayed in the toxic job, that you didn't address the harmful relationship, that you spent thousands of hours scrolling? Or will you regret that you didn't take the risk, didn't stay longer, didn't try harder? Extending the timeline changes priorities radically. What seems urgent now reveals itself as trivial. What seems insignificant now reveals itself as essential. Fourth criterion, does it let you sleep? Your body knows things your mind rationalizes away. If you can't sleep well, wake up restless, feel depleted rather than restored, your body is telling you something about how you're living. Pay attention to your sleep quality, not just hours, but how you feel waking up. Do you feel restored, ready, or anxious, heavy, dreading the day? If your conduct, what you eat, consume, say, do, think about, prevents good sleep, that's direct feedback that something needs to change. Use these 4 criteria to evaluate everything. That relationship, that job, that habit, that commitment, that boundary, that plan. Does it cause harm? Is it beneficial? Will I regret it? Does it let me sleep? Answer honestly, and the right action often becomes clear. Now let's address something that might be coming up. What about situations you genuinely can't leave? real ones. Not "I can't," meaning it would be uncomfortable or require sacrifice. But genuinely can't. You're caring for someone who needs you. You're in a contract you can't break. You're in circumstances that truly offer no exit right now. Then the practice shifts. You're in stage 2 whether you're ready or not. So, you make that situation your practice ground. Every interaction with that difficult person becomes your patience practice. Every moment of stress becomes your equanimity practice. Every trigger becomes your mindfulness practice. You're not trying to like the situation or pretend it's fine. You're using it as your training ground because that's what's available. This is hard, much harder than creating distance and building foundation in peace. But it's possible if you approach it as practice rather than as something you have to endure. This person just said something that usually triggers my harsh speech. Can I respond differently this time? Not because I should, but because I'm practicing. I'm feeling overwhelmed by this situation. Can I stay present with that feeling instead of reacting to it? What happens if I don't immediately try to fix or escape? You're turning necessity into opportunity. But, and this is important, you also need support. If you can't create physical distance, create other kinds of support. Time with people who restore you, practices that build your capacity, professional help, if available, boundaries within the situation, even if you can't leave it. I have to live with this person, but I don't have to engage in every argument. I can remove myself to another room. I have to go to this job, but I can take walks at lunch. I can protect my mornings and evenings. I can look for other positions while I'm here. You create what distance you can within the constraint. Most importantly, be honest about whether you truly can't leave or whether you're choosing not to. Many people say, "I have to," when they mean, leaving would require changes I'm not willing to make. There's no judgment in this. Sometimes staying is the right choice, even when leaving is possible. You're choosing to prioritize something else: financial security, family cohesion, commitment you want to honor. But be honest that it's a choice, because recognizing choice removes the sense of being trapped. I'm choosing to stay in this job because the pay supports my family, even though it costs me in other ways. I'm making that choice consciously. That's very different from, "I have no choice, I'm trapped here." One creates agency, the other creates victimhood. Same external situation, completely different internal experience. Let's bring this all together practically. You're going to work with 3 specific practices for the next 2 weeks. Practice 1. Identify one harmful pattern and create one specific boundary to address it. Make it something you genuinely see creates suffering and genuinely want to stop, not something you think you should stop because it makes you look good. Write it down clearly. I won't check my phone after 9 p.m. I won't speak about people who aren't present unless solving a problem with them. I won't say yes when my first response is no. Then create support for that boundary. What will you do when you want to break it? How will you respond if you do break it? Practice 2. Evening reflection, 10 minutes daily. 3 questions. What beneficial actions? What harmful actions? What did I learn? Appreciate the beneficial to reinforce them. Genuinely regret the harmful to weaken them. Extract learning to improve. This practice alone will create measurable change within 2 weeks. Practice 3. Honest evaluation of one situation causing you suffering. Use the 4 criteria. Does it cause harm? Is it beneficial? Will I regret it later? Does it let me sleep? Answer honestly. Then decide, do I need distance from this? Can I engage with it as practice? What support do I need? And act on what you discover. Not someday, this week. These aren't advanced practices. They're foundation, conduct level work that creates the stability everything else builds on. You might want more exciting practices, advanced meditation techniques, profound philosophical insights, mystical experiences. But those come later, built on this foundation. Without this foundation, they're unstable, temporary, cosmetic. With this foundation, they arise naturally when you're ready. So give yourself these 2 weeks. 1 boundary, practiced. 10 minutes of evening reflection. Honest evaluation of one situation. See what changes. Not what you achieve or how perfect you become, but what shifts in your actual daily experience. How you sleep, how you feel waking up, your energy through the day, the quality of your relationships, your capacity to be present, the frequency of regret, the moments of peace. These aren't theoretical benefits. They're tangible differences you'll notice. Because you're not trying to become someone different. You're removing what's covering who you already are. The peace isn't something to create. It's something to liberate by stopping what's blocking it. And what's blocking it is simpler than you think. Not complex philosophical confusion or deep psychological wounds that need years of therapy. Just patterns, behavioral patterns repeated until they feel like you. That can be interrupted, replaced, released. Starting now, starting with 1 boundary, 1 reflection practice, 1 honest evaluation. That's how transformation actually works. Not through dramatic revelation or supernatural intervention. Through conscious choice, repeated consistently, building foundation that supports deeper change. You have everything you need to begin. You understand the principles now. You have the practices. You know the stages and how to respect them. All that remains is actually doing it. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just consistently. 2 weeks. That's all. 2 weeks of foundation work. See what becomes possible. "3 hours ago, You arrived here carrying patterns you couldn't break. Now you understand why those patterns existed and how they release. You learned that seeking satisfaction in temporary things creates endless restlessness, not peace. That your private actions shape you more powerfully than public ones. That real freedom comes through conscious boundaries, not unlimited permission. That your words create suffering or peace in every conversation. That transformation happens in stages you can't skip. This isn't theory. It's a path tested by millions of people across 25 centuries. It works because it addresses causes, not symptoms. Your work for the next 2 weeks is simple. Choose one harmful pattern. Create one specific boundary. Practice it daily. Spend 10 minutes each evening in reflection. Appreciate beneficial actions to strengthen them. Genuinely regret harmful ones to weaken them. Learn from both. Evaluate one situation causing you suffering. Decide honestly whether you need distance or can engage it as practice. Act on what you discover. That's all. 2 weeks. 3 simple practices. Watch what changes in how you sleep, how you wake up, your energy through the day, the quality of your relationships, the moments of actual peace. You're not broken. You're not missing something you need to acquire. You have within you the same capacity for peace that every Buddha discovered. Right now, it's covered by patterns that can be released. One boundary at a time. One reflection at a time. One conscious choice at a time. The peace you've been seeking isn't out there. It's here, waiting.